Hi everyone, welcome to week 7. This is what our module looks like this week, and I'm just going to really focus on the literature review here, but I'll show you first our overview has the links for office hours and signups for one-on-ones, and shows you in detail sort of what you're going to do this week. And this module is going to be one of those that's locked as you go through it, so you're going to need to complete assignment 7.1 in order to get to 7.2, 7.3, and finally to get to 7.4, which is our final research deliverable. Now, just because you can't get into those doesn't mean that you can't see what they are and what you have to do. That's in the overview, so you can check that out there. So this first assignment is where we are right now, and my video that I'm making will be here, and there's some there's other resources, video resources at the bottom. I would like you to read this text here that talks about what a literature review is, what the purpose of a literature review is. And so let's talk about that right now. I know I've mentioned lit reviews to you before. I've showed them to you when we're reading things. Sometimes they're not called lit reviews. Sometimes they just come as the introduction, as in this very first article that we read together, abstract keywords, and then here it is. And this is I'm calling this the literature review. Here it's sort of part of the introduction, but it is where the researchers synthesize the research they've been doing till now. So like I keep saying to you, you're becoming experts in this field of study right now as you're reading and doing these really detailed research logs. And here's where you really start to synthesize the information that you've been learning. And you're going to see when you read our chapter on synthesis, which is in the module from last week, but I think you should do, which, and it's due this week, but I would really recommend reading these chapters to understand a little bit more about synthesis. But synthesizing is not summarizing. It's taking the things you're reading about and really making meaning of them and making connections between them. So this group of researchers is working on this, and this is when you're really heavily using the in-text citations as well. So this group of researchers is really working around this theme, and here's some of the findings here. But this group of researchers is really kind of saying this and this, and I'm going to go and do this. That's sort of a very general view of what a literature review looks like. And you've been reading these, and when you're reading them, sometimes they feel confusing, I think because all the in-text citations are just kind of popping out at you, but I feel like now you have a much better understanding of this. So I'm going to give you, this module is going to help you really work through it. So this assignment is just understanding what a literature review is. The next assignment, you're going to see a student sample of a literature review. You're just going to quickly annotate it. I just want you to look at it and see what a student did. It's a draft, which is what you're going to submit at the end of the week. And then the third assignment is where you're going to really start building your literature review, and you're going to use one of two kinds of charts that I made for you. So you can organize your literature review in two ways, based on your guiding questions or based on themes identified in the literature. When you click on these, it's going to opt you to copy them. I already copied them for you here because I wanted to start showing you. When you copy these, remember to put your name and the title up here. And I'm going to say go ahead and put them in the folders that we're working on if you want. I think that's going to be easier for us to keep things organized. And so here's what these charts look like. This is a 3-point assignment, so you're getting 1 point for each of these grids. I want you to do 3 of them for whichever you choose. So you might choose to organize by your guiding questions, or you might choose to organize by your themes. And so let's first start with the guiding questions. So if you were filling out this literature review using your guiding questions, oops, that's that one. You would first put the guiding question right up here. So I put mine: how do neurodivergent community college students experience asynchronous classes? Okay, so now you're really thinking, what are the sources I read about this? So I'm going to take source 1, and up here you're going to want to put the method and the sample size, right? Because you really want to be able to say, this study surveyed 500 students, in 2020, asking them about XYZ, right? So that's what's going to go here with your in-text citations. You're going to summarize the key findings here, and then you're going to compare it to other articles. Now, some of this you've been doing in your research logs. That's why I've been making them so detailed. Some of them you're still working on in your research logs, but that's what you're going to put here. And you're going to do that for 3 sources. So let's say you have 3 sources that you feel like really speak to this question: how do neurodivergent community college students experience asynchronous classes? You're going to cite 3 sources here as they refer to this question. Then you're going to think about your second question: are asynchronous college writing classes meeting the needs of neurodivergent students? So you might be using, right, similar sources from here to here. One article might answer and address both of these questions. So then you're going to do the same thing here, right? Method chosen sample size, which is something you're always going to mention when you're writing about a study. Key findings compared to other articles. So this is where you're really thinking. What you're doing here is you're putting your research in conversation with each other. It's like you're making a big TV show for all these characters to communicate with each other, and you're also communicating with them, but you're finding meaning and finding connections between these studies based on your guiding questions. You're using your guiding questions as like the umbrella organizing system. And then you're going to do it a third time if you have 3 guiding questions. Some of you might only have 2, in which case you would submit 2 of these, and you can add more rows, right? You can always add rows to this by clicking tab. So let's say you just have 2 guiding questions, or even 1, you would make this quite a bit longer. And if that's the case for you and you're worried about getting 3 points for it, let's talk about how you're going to use that. But I would want you to cite, let's say since each of these have three columns, if you're, let's make sure you have 9 sources altogether, even if some of them are the same sources. So let's say you turn in 1 chart. Let's make sure, because you only have 1 guiding question, which is not the case for most of you. You would have then make sure you have 9 of these. Okay. You can ask me more about that later if you want. Let's say you want to organize by theme. And this might seem a little harder, but I bet your brain is already doing this without even knowing it. So as I'm thinking through this research, I'm thinking, okay, there's a really big theme in general, of accessibility in online classes, both goals and challenges, since 2020, right? We know that 2020 was a big turning point for online classes. So I'm noticing this as a theme, and I'm going to pull those themes out of the research and I'm going to put them in conversation here in this chart so I can think about how I'm going to write my literature review. I would do that for my second theme as well: specific accessibility practices to support online learning for neurodivergent students. That's another theme I'm seeing. Like, I really want to organize that. There's some literature that's really specific about accessibility practices, and I'm going to organize that here in this second chart. Then I'm noticing a third theme, which is that out of the body of research around neurodivergent students, I'm noticing that students with autism and students with ADHD have really different perceptions of asynchronous classes. So maybe that's another chart here. So again, you're reading for theme here, and that might seem confusing, but I bet you're already starting to find themes in your literature. And if you're confused, read your research logs over, spend some time with them, take some notes as you're doing that. As indicated by a surge in research over the past decade. So right here, what they're telling you is there's been a ton of research in the past 10 years. So as indicated by that surge of research, and then here's our citation: Engel and Tinto, 2008, Cook, Kinsey, Buckley, Bridges, and Hayek, 2006. Those are all the researchers that are surging with this, right? So then here's the main idea: a major barrier to FGLI student access is a lack of college readiness. College readiness is defined as the level of preparation required to be successful in college without the need for remedial coursework. Right here, we're citing this idea again. So this is what college readiness means, and this is who said it, right? And so your other writing won't be so heavily cited with in-text citations, but this literature review really well, because you're really trying to show your readers, like, here's my expertise on the subject, here's everything I've learned about it, I'm going to summarize it for you so that I can really get into telling you about my research. There are examples. You're going to already have seen an example, and then um, after you read this text and you check out these videos, I think this series of YouTube videos really talks about themes in literature review nicely and she gives an example. And then if you like slides, this is a slide deck that talks about both what the literature review is, and this one really gets into the language of a literature review, so you can start to practice these words. And here they're called high frequency reporting verbs. These are just words we use to say that someone said something, so we're not constantly saying they said, the researchers said, they think. Mm, Did they suggest? Did they argue? Did they find? Did they demonstrate? Did they show? Some of these words are synonyms, right? And some of them are what we're always looking for, right? We're always looking for, like, how do I specifically say what this researcher did? Or how do I say it a little differently than I want to? So we've been talking about this all quarter, right? And these are the words here for you. So even as I know some of you are sometimes using Grammarly for stuff like this, but this slide presentation is going to really show you in context how these words are used. So all the different kinds of transitions you might need, and these little words that signify difference. However, although, on the one hand, on the other hand, you'll get you'll get to check out. And then this link here, which is linked in a couple of other places, is sort of, this is a not so great literature review. And then right below it is an okay literature review. And then under that, we're getting to a strong literature review. And again, it's the same research. So um, this will be good for you to check out. This one just lists the studies. This one makes some connections. And this one below really makes connections throughout all the sources. So this 7.1 is going to show you how to do what you need to do after you do your charts. So that's when you're going to get into the main deliverable assignment, which is due on Sunday. So you should be working through this through the whole week. I'd love to see you submitting these assignments as the week goes by, just as if you were in an in-person class where you were working every day. And then this assignment is giving you, even more information about how to build this draft of a literature review. Remember, it's a draft. You're going to get to revise it for during week 10. Right after you submit this to me, you're going to also submit it in this group discussion, because next week y'all are going to peer review each other on these drafts, and I'll say more about that later. Okay, I hope this video is helpful. Let me know if you have any questions at all. Remember, there's just no bad question except the one that you don't ask, because then you're just sitting with it and I don't know you have it and you don't know we have it, and none of us can be successful that way.